Welcome, everyone, to the MCE Executive Committee meeting, Monday, March 2nd, 12 o'clock. It's actually 12:01. It's March 2nd, 2026. We have two locations, Tamalpais Avenue in San Rafael and 2300 Clayton Road in Concord. So with that, Madam Clerk, do you have any announcements? Okay, then let's move on to Madam Clerk, could you do a roll call, please?
Yes. Belvedere. Benicia. Concord.
Here.
Contra Costa County.
Here. Benicia's here, sorry.
Thank you. Fairfax.
Here.
Larkspur.
Here.
Mill Valley.
Here.
Napa.
Here.
Pinal.
Here.
San Rafael.
Here.
Walnut Creek.
Here.
Quorum established.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Moving on to board announcements. I just want to mention something as chair. We have at least one person who has to leave a little early. So what I'd like to do is move a couple things around, move consent until after we do items 6 and 7. And I don't know if we can call for a motion for that right now. Catalina? Would somebody like to move that?
I'll move approval. This director is Scales Preston.
I'll second.
Okay, so
Parade.
that was Scales Preston, move approval, second Paray, and
Are we moving it to the back or?
we're moving 6 and 7 before the consent calendar. Okay, so Madam Clerk, would you take a roll call vote, please?
Yes. Belvedere. Benicia.
Present.
Yes.
Sorry, is Belvedere in San Rafael?
Yes, she just arrived.
Thank you. So Belvedere.
Jessica, we may want to, as she just took her seat, let her know what we're voting on. So this is, Director Wilkinson, this is a motion to move consent to after item 7, the budget item.
After item 6 and 7.
Yes.
Thank you. Benicia.
Yes.
Concord.
Yes.
Contra Costa County.
Yes.
Fairfax.
Yes.
Larkspur.
Yes.
Mill Valley.
Yes.
Napa.
Yes.
Pinal.
Yes.
San Rafael.
Yes.
Walnut Creek.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Any other board announcements?
Yes, through the chair, this is Director Scales Preston.
Yes.
I have to leave. I have a meeting at 2:30 for the county, so I need to leave at 2:00.
Okay, and I just want to mention, we're going to do things a little differently. So maybe this will be helpful, maybe it won't. We're going to, when we have an item, we're going to call for questions of staff. Then we will move to public comment. Then we'll bring it back for deliberation. So everyone gets one set of questions in the beginning, and then we will call for the motion. So hopefully that'll move things along a little bit. Thank you. So moving on to public open time. Do we have anyone in San Rafael who wants to speak at open time? Seeing none, anyone in Concord?
There are no members of the public here in Concord.
Anyone on Zoom?
Yes, I see Dan Sejadin and Jody Timms.
Okay, go ahead, please.
Dan Sejadin, Marine Conservation League. Good afternoon. Just following up on a couple items we've requested verbally and in writing and where we've not received a response yet. The first is the estimate of GHG emissions on an hourly basis, which is MCE's true emissions footprint. Looks like it's about 77 to 78% GHG free, but we'd like to confirm that number, to have management confirm it since it wasn't stated, and also to get the methodology and assumptions behind the estimate. Second, and more germane to today's discussion about expenses, it's management's estimate that we would only save $3 million by reducing PCC1 attribute purchases. We calculate
Dan,
that
I
would be
believe
more
that's
like,
an agenda item. Excuse me for interrupting you, but that is an agenda item. We're going to be talking about proposed budget elements.
yes, okay.
So
This
that's
is
not
really
for
an
open time.
information request regarding that budget item.
Okay, thank you.
We calculate it'd be more like 13 to 16 million. That's kind of a big difference. So we're not saying our number is necessarily right, but the 3 million seems off. So we just like to understand the assumptions around this estimate, the number of megawatt hours and the price per megawatt hour used to get the 3 million. That should be readily available. We don't think the board can make good decisions regarding expenses unless these assumptions in the estimate are confirmed ASAP. Thank you.
Thank you, Dan. Jody Timms, please.
Good afternoon, I guess, Executive Committee. I'm glad to hear about the order. Thank you, Barbara, for clarifying how you'll proceed through the items. I think that's what I'm used to and sounds good. I'm just wanting to say I'm here. I'm hoping to leave with a much better understanding of the proposed cuts and increases with the budget. I want to second Dan's comments about MCL. It seems like from MCL, you need as much information as possible, and having clear understanding of that would be helpful. That's what I'd like to get out of the meeting by the end so that I can represent to 350 Marin, who I'm speaking on behalf of, how things are moving forward, as well as other community activists I'm aware of and am in communication with. So I wish you all luck, and I'll be listening, and hopefully I leave with a better understanding of how things are looking for the budget for next year. Thank you.
Thank you, Jody. Moving on to the report from our executive officer.
Thank you. I wanted to give a quick update on the PCIA bill, AB 1761, that we discussed in last month's board meeting. CalCCA is sponsoring this bill by Assemblymember Chris Rogers, and it's focused on increasing transparency in how the PCIA is calculated each year. Greater transparency will improve accuracy, reduce costs for customers, and allow MCE and other CCAs to forecast the PCIA charges earlier and more accurately. Earlier visibility will give us more time to evaluate whether and how much to use our rate stabilization fund in a given year. You all received an email last week from our board clerk with additional information, including the author's fact sheet and a template letter of support. So you may want to consider bringing it to your council for approval. Big thanks to Director Murphy for already getting his letter in and submitted. I really appreciate that. If you have any questions, please reach out to Stephanie Chen, our Vice President of Legislative Affairs, and keep an eye out for additional information on CalCCA's second bill that we're partnering with them on, and this will be addressing resource adequacy prices. We expect to share more details in the coming days. And then last of all, just wanted to let folks know that staff has published digital public notices in newspapers throughout MCE's service area regarding the board's proposed 14% rate decrease, including the Daily Republic in Fairfield, the East Bay Times, the Marin Independent Journal, and the Napa Valley Register. This is in advance of the March board meeting where the budget will be approved, incorporating those rate decreases. Our press release announcing the proposed rate reduction was also published in the Daily Republic last week. And that's it for my report. Thank you.
Thank you, Dawn. Any questions of Dawn on her report? Any public comment in San Rafael on this? Any public comment in Concord on Dawn's report?
No public comment here in Concord.
And anything on Zoom?
Just a comment.
I see no raised hands.
Okay, I'm sorry. I missed Director Perez.
Yeah,
comment.
just a comment. I know MCCMC's legislative committee met last week and put together kind of priority areas of interest. And just, I'm not on that committee, but encourage those who are Marin board members to have the MCCMC legislative committee consider these bills to support.
Okay, just quickly, I am on that committee. I'm the vice chair, and it's not within our scope of advocacy, so you can bring it to the full MCCMC. Thank you. So we're moving on, and we are going to selection of executive committee vice chair. I don't know who's doing the staff report. Do we have someone here?
There's no staff report for this item. This was simply brought because it was requested at the last executive committee meeting that this committee also have a vice chair to mirror what's happening over in technical committee. I believe the finance committee is also having a similar vote at their next meeting. We do have a board roster that it is listed in there that shows someone who is interested, but the floor is open to the committee.
Looks like the only person of interest at this point is Director Darling. Are there any directors in Concord that have an interest other than Director Darling? Any directors in San Rafael that have an interest?
I don't have an interest, but I do have a question.
Okay, we'll get to that in 1 second. Actually, let's go for a question.
Just seeing at the last ExCom meeting, we were told that we couldn't appoint a vice chair because it had to go to the board. What happened? And then you bring it back now saying it doesn't need to go to the board?
I think that might not be quite, as I understood what happened at the last meeting. What I understood was we couldn't select a vice chair because it was not agendized for the February meeting. So it needed to be agendized for the March meeting in order to select a vice chair.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Okay, thank you. All right, let's move to public comment on this item. Anybody in Concord?
No members of the public in Concord.
Anybody on Zoom?
No raised hands on Zoom, Chair.
And anybody in San Rafael on public comment on this item? Okay, I'd like to call for a motion. Would somebody like to proceed?
I'll be delighted to make a motion to appoint Director Darling as vice chair for the executive committee.
And I'll second that motion. This is Director Scales Preston in Concord.
Okay, Madam Chair, I'm giving you a new title. Madam Clerk, could you do a roll call vote, please?
Yes. Belvedere,
Yes.
Benicia,
Yes.
Concord,
Yes.
Contra Costa County,
Yes.
Fairfax,
Yes.
Larkspur,
Yes.
Mill Valley,
Yes.
Napa,
Yes.
Pinole,
Yes.
San Rafael,
Yes.
Walnut Creek.
Yes. And thank you guys.
Motion carries. Congratulations.
Okay, so thank you very much, Director Darling, for stepping up. I usually don't miss meetings, but it can happen. So thank you very much. So let's move on to the big item of the day, the proposed fiscal year 26-27 budgets. And is this Maida?
Thank you, Director Kohler. Good afternoon, everyone. So this is one of the biggest items of my job here for the year at MCE is the fiscal year proposed budget. Everyone is in the edge of their seat waiting for it. I hope so. Not joking. So anyways, for this item, Efren Okshala on my right is going to join me on presenting the item, as well as Alice Havenar-Docton, Vice President of Customer Programs, and our CEO, Don Weiss, is also going to join us. For this presentation, we sent the committee a detailed staff report together with some slides, so kind of summarizing the staff report. And for the delivery of the presentation this afternoon, we reduced the number of slides considerably just to allow us for more time for discussion and expedite the meeting. So what we are going to have on the screen, you have way more slides on your packet. All of the slides on the screen are on your packet. And if we go through the 6 slides that we're going to go through at the end of that, if you want us to pull up any slides for discussion, please let us know the title of the slides, and they will put it up on the screen. So let's start. Next slide, please. So I'll have Efren.
Thank you, Maida. Good afternoon, board. My name is Efren Oxla, and before I start, I also want to give a shout out to the rest of the finance team who helped put the materials together, including Susan Hargrave, who's here, and Sina Mayer, who's watching online. So for today's presentation, we wanted to start with an update on where the current fiscal year is trending. And as of the latest numbers that we have, which remain preliminary, MCE's change in net position is projected to be $67 million or $50.5 million above the approved budget. The main reason for this is lower energy costs. This category is projected to be about $91 million below budget, which is an improvement of almost 12%. The reasons for this include the following. Number one, we shifted costs to the previous fiscal year. And as you'll recall, we shifted $36.4 million to fiscal year 24-25 as a result of early deliveries of renewable energy. Second, we also, our power resources team has also been optimizing our power supply portfolio, and they've been making strategic sales of surplus products. Three, as a result of the low summer loads, we were better hedged at CAISO, which reduced our exposure to CAISO market costs. Outside of the cost of energy, operating expenses as well as program expenses are trending below budget, while income from investments and interest is trending significantly above budget. And together, all of those results lead to that change in the position number that we see here. So this presents a very significant opportunity for MCE to potentially defer income from the current fiscal year into the operating reserve fund. Pass back to you, Maida.
Thank you, Efren. So on the screen now, we see a summary of this proposed fiscal year 26-27. So we have a proposed revenue of 621, ORF withdrawal of 62 million, cost of energy 632, operating expenses of 54, non-operating revenue of 13 million, and program expenses at 9.1 million, with changing net position for 1.3. I would like to point out a few items in this slide. First of all, this proposed budget that we are bringing to AXCOM is being refined to bring to the board. So I would like to think about those numbers as our big highlight points. And if when we bring it to the board, we will have a little variance on those as we tighten up the numbers. And at the board, I will point it out. I'm not expecting a huge variance, but I am not expecting to have the exact same numbers as we have on the screen, just as we are working on and tightening up the numbers. So this would be the big picture of what would be presented at the board, but the exact precise numbers would be a little bit different. Also, I want to call attention for the program expenses. We are going to be discussing program expenses options, but in order to present the budget, excuse me, to you today, I added the whole number, which is $9.1 million for program expenses, and it's pending our discussion today to refine those numbers. And with that, the ORF withdrawal of 62 million, it can be 61, 63 when we bring it to the board, but it will be around this helm of not a single-digit variance to the board. So the strategy is that, but the small change on numbers are expected too. Okay, next slide, please. And I'd like to call Alice to present this one.
Yes, good morning. Thank you, Maida. So this slide was created following the first budget workshop in response to some of the questions that we got there. And so I want to explain kind of what you're looking at here and the purpose of this. So MCE has 3 funds that support all of our programs. We have the Energy Efficiency Fund, the Local Programs Fund, and the Resiliency Fund. The Energy Efficiency Fund is entirely funded externally. However, the Resiliency Fund and the Local Programs Fund are funded through contributions from MCE budget. So one of the questions that we got at the first budget workshop was wanting to see all of the programs that we are talking about when we talk about programs consolidated into one place. So regardless of which fund they're funded through, this is a list of the programs that MCE budget would be supporting in the next fiscal year if the budget is approved as proposed. And the last kind of contextual piece I want to add here is when you look at all of MCE's programs, there's more than what's listed on this slide. So this is only showing the programs that have some level of contribution from MCE funds. And then the amount in the right-hand column is that amount that we are proposing in the next fiscal year budget. And then I think we can move on to the next slide, which I think goes back to you, Maida.
Chair, do you want us to save questions till the end?
Yes, please. Thank you.
Thank you, Alex. So on this slide here, we have our personnel expenses after the grant reimbursement. And after the grant reimbursement, I pull up this slide specifically, not the other one. It's because this is how it goes on our budget. It's netted out of the grant reimbursements. So it represents a 12% change from the approved budget for this current fiscal year with a 3.2 million increase. And we have an anticipated modest reduction in grant reimbursement from what it's here on the screen. So I'm going to call our CEO, Dawn Weiss.
Thanks, Maida. Yeah, I just wanted to make a few comments and actually, if we're able to jump down, I'd like us to reference slide 19 in the slide deck, just so that folks can get a feel. Sorry, I am on the wrong deck here. Yeah, I wanted to just say a little bit about personnel costs, and I'm happy to answer more questions as we progress. But personnel decisions are one component of our overall budget framework that are really hinging on the continuity and institutional knowledge that we need to maintain at MCE. Our decisions about hiring and retention go through a very structured process, and that includes an evaluation each year and a determination of making sure that folks are being compensated at comparable levels with the market. We have a lot of data on this that we're happy to dive into, but I don't want to take up too much time unless folks have questions about it. So I'm gonna pause there and just let you all know that we have a lot more data. We have a lot more slides to present if there's an interest in diving in deeper on the personnel issue. But I'll turn it back over to Maida to walk us through the remainder of the budget categories, and we'll see if folks want to dive into this any further. So we can go back up to where we were. Thanks.
Thank you, Dawn. If we can go to slide number 6, please. So on on the discussion today, we are also talk about a recommendation to the board on customer program spending. So Alice, if you can present this slide, please.
Yes. So the options that are presented here on this slide are options that we have pulled together in the event that this board or this committee would like to recommend reducing the total budget proposed for programs. So while we have put together a portfolio of programs that we feel are effective, we look at which programs are not effective each year, what's not working, and make adjustments. And we're proposing a budget and a portfolio of programs that we believe are effective, help our customers, help further our mission. But given the current budget process that we're in, we wanted to present options if the board felt like that was, they wanted to see options for a lower amount of total program funding. So what we did is we looked at, of all the programs that we are proposing to fund with MCE money, where could we reduce the total budget in kind of an effective way? So there are certain programs where there may be more administrative costs that, are harder to reduce and scale back. So anyways, the options that we have up here on the screen, first is to fully fund the proposed budget. Second, as an option to reduce the budget, would be to reduce funding for the EV Instant Rebate Program. And just to say a few words about why we have that as the first option. That program is currently on pause. It fully allocated its budget earlier this year. So there would be no cost associated with shutting that program down. It's currently on pause. There's also a lot going on with the EV market, a lot of things in flux. I don't know that I can say for sure today what that means for EV purchases, because we have the federal tax credits expired in the last year. We have a proposed state program that we don't know the details of yet. So that's why that program wound up kind of at the top of this list. We have an option to reduce funding that essentially cuts it in half, and we would serve half the proposed number of customers, or an option to fully eliminate the funding for that program and keep it paused through the coming fiscal year. Moving further down the list, the fourth option would be to close the EV charging program to new applicants in the coming year. We wouldn't be able to fully shut that program down because we have commitments to customers who have projects underway. So we would continue to work with those customers and close their projects out, but we wouldn't take in any new applicants. Because most of those projects take more than 1 year, we would also see an impact next fiscal year of doing that, because that's when we would expect those new projects coming in. Most of them would close out next year, but we would save on some of the technical assistance and ongoing program management costs in doing that. And then the fifth option on the screen is to eliminate our electrification incentives. These are additional incentives that MCE layers on top of our energy efficiency programs to help make electrification, like heat pump water heaters and heat pump space heaters, more feasible for our customers to adopt. And so we could eliminate those. That equipment is very in alignment with MCE's mission. And there's another element of this that we're sort of leveraging our energy efficiency funds for the administration of this program. And we just, all of that $942,000 that's proposed for the next budget is incentives for customers. There's no admin or staffing costs tied to that, because that's all comes out of the underlying energy efficiency program. What we didn't include in this list is any program that has matching grant funds, where we would be sort of jeopardizing our ability to receive that grant in the future. So these would be the options that we would recommend if the board did not want to approve the full proposed program budget.
Thank you, Alice. So with that, I would like to open the discussion for the recommendation of the approval of the proposed fiscal year 26-27 budgets, including the proposed program development fund transfer to support the customer programs funding that Alice just described.
Okay, thank you very much, staff. Now, I'm opening up to questions only right now. So I'm going to start with San Rafael and Director Perret.
Yeah, if we can go back to the slide showing the cost. It was when I asked Director Kohler if I should save questions till the end. It has like a list of the costs of each program. Yes. So if I understand correctly, this is MCE's general fund. This is the augmented amount. This is not the total amount of each of these programs. Is that correct? Okay,
That's correct.
great. And then if we can jump ahead to the slide we were just on. Yeah, this one. Yeah. So for option number 2, I want to understand a little bit more about the EV Instant Rebate Program. And just curious if we considered expanding this program, given the federal budget, the HR 1 restricting federal tax credits. I understand there's a lot of flux here, and I understand why it's top of the list for elimination if we do consider eliminating programs, but just curious if we considered expanding or changing the program to make it more effective given the federal budget.
Yes. So we did expand the program in the last fiscal year, and that was something that the board approved through a contract amendment with our implementation partner. When the expiration of the federal tax credits was announced, we saw a 260% increase in the number of EV rebate claims that were coming through for, I think it was July through, then they expired at the end of September, October, I'm forgetting that date. And so our program, while we had the amount of money in it, that without those tax credits expiring should have lasted us all the way through the end of March. We were quickly running out of funds with that increase in the number of rebates coming in. So we did expand that program by about $1 million last fiscal year, which took us through mid-November, at which point we still had exhausted the funds for that program. And that's the reason that program is currently on pause. I think we're still trying to understand. I mean, it's interesting because California in general is above the national adoption rate for EVs, but our 4-county area is even above the California average for adoption of EVs. So while we got a lot of statistics nationally about what happened to EV sales after the federal tax credit expired, and even at a statewide level, we're still trying to really understand what's happening in our 4-county area, because in October, which is after the federal tax credit expired, we did see sales drop off, but they dropped off to a higher level than we saw last October, and that trend continued into November. So, I mean, I guess kind of to answer your question, we're still trying to understand what is really happening with EV sales in our local area and how it's responding to the expiration of the federal tax credits. And then I think looking forward, figuring out the need, it's going to be important what happens with the state credit that has been proposed, but we don't really have the details of exactly who's going to be eligible or how that will be implemented. So there could be a great opportunity there for us to kind of partner and like leverage and make our credit on stackable on top of that, or that could also run out very quickly. I don't know how exactly it will be rolled out.
So if we went with option number 1 and fully funded the EV program, your recommendation would be that you continue to pause it until the state budget goes into effect July 1, and then after that would assess how to structure it, or we would bring it back immediately? How would that work?
Option 1, to fully approve the proposed budget, we would relaunch that program in the beginning of April. That is our best guess at what we would need to keep that program open through this whole coming fiscal year. Obviously, things could change and we could bring that information back to the board as we see how these other factors impact sales. The second option to partially fund it, that would probably mean we would have to either wait at the start of the year and only implement that credit later in the year. There'd have to be like a time-bound element to it to limit the overall budget.
Great, thank you.
Other questions in San Rafael? Sally or Director Wilkinson?
Thank you. I have a few questions. The first is in relation to the breakdown of energy costs. You've got about 33 million on PCC1 and 21 million on carbon-free attributes. And my question there, and we've discussed this before, is how much of that is already effectively money locked in? And then the second question is, are we essentially here approving a budget ceiling for that spending on those attributes, or how is that? Meaning if they are more expensive than you anticipate, what's the plan around that?
Viken, would you like to take this question, or Dawn?
Could we go to that slide, please?
It's slide 15.
The question that Director Wilkinson asked.
Mayeda, you need to talk into your mic. I don't think you have
It's slide, yeah, that's the one. Thank you.
Director Wilkinson, is this the right slide?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay, and could you please ask your question again?
Sure. So you've got there on that slide about 33 million on PCC1s and then 21 million on carbon-free attributes. And my question there is, if this budget is approved, are we essentially saying to you, Viken, that that's the ceiling on which you can spend? Or are you, if those attributes end up being more expensive than planned for the ones you haven't already locked in, are you anticipating, as in prior years, you can just spend extra money, or how do you view that for this year?
Yeah, thank you. So this is the expectations that nothing is locked in. And based on the prices and the volumes that we are seeing expected to fill for the next fiscal year. And we have talked about it a little bit more previously about being on as far as procurement and targets a flexible approach for at least for this fiscal year, maybe some upcoming fiscal years also with the budget situation and the dynamic situation of compliance rules, market availability, scarcity, or other market implications. So again, these are expectations based on what we're seeing at this time, based on the volumes that we are trying to cover, but nothing is locked in. These are expectations.
But I guess my question is, if there's significant variance, will you bring that back to the board for discussion?
The short answer is yes. We have a proposal that we will bring to you that talks about 5 to 10% variability in the flexibility that we are requesting. But the short answer is yes, Director Wilkinson.
Okay, thank you. I have a few questions around compensation as well. And the first is that I think it's great that you've moved the merit increases to April 1st going forward. I was curious why you're planning to still include promotions earlier in the year rather than on the April 1st to align with the budget.
The promotions are along the year. They are not on April 1st. So some of them, right, Lindsay, are not all of them on April 1st. We spread them through the year.
But in terms of the budget, it again creates complications because then it rolls over into the next year's budget. And so aligning everything with the budget would seem to make some sense.
So for the next fiscal year, it will be a full impact. But on this fiscal year, it's just when the promotions happen, they're spread out. Lindsay, do you want to say more about when the promotions happen?
Yes, absolutely. So for the promotions, at MCE, we look at a number of different factors when evaluating when somebody is eligible for a promotion. And that would include tenure and time within the position. And so in order to maintain equity and consistency across our growth pathways, we look at a lot of different factors in terms of performance, tenure, and then go through an overall review cycle of when they would be eligible. And so they do happen throughout the year based on eligibility. So if we were to shift them all to a singular date, some folks might be then getting promoted earlier than they might be ready or have to wait then a full calendar year or calendar fiscal year in order to be eligible. But Shaheen, I don't know if you want to add anything to that also.
Yeah, I'd actually like to jump in here. Shane, you're welcome to tag on if I miss anything. But I just wanted to clarify for Director Wilkinson that personnel decisions are really just one component of our overall budget framework, like power supply contracts and long-term vendor agreements that have multi-year financial implications that flow into our revenue requirements. We believe in fair compensation for our staff for internal growth opportunities, with a philosophy really grounded in market competitiveness, internal equity, fiscal responsibility, and transparency. And we also do a lot to not just attract staff, but retain them. And the promotions are a really important part of our retention strategy. And I want to point out that we have a very defined structure that we've presented to the board before and can spend more time on in a future meeting if folks would like, for how we assess the appropriate pay levels. Compensation is determined by job scope. It's also determined by the responsibility, the level of autonomy, the impact that's required by the position, and the salary ranges are established through independent benchmarking that we do with a third party to make sure that we are providing what's going to allow us to retain folks. Because once we have a vacancy, it really impacts the entire agency, or at least the surrounding staff, to kind of backfill for that missing position, do the recruitment. In many cases, we've had difficulty filling positions, and they've remained open for many months. We've had to do multiple rounds of recruitment in some cases. We try to avoid using headhunter firms, but in some cases that has been necessary. We've seen growing complexity with some of our positions. Happy to get into that if folks have questions about it. But really on the topic of promotions, I want to make sure folks realize that the way that we structure our internal advancement is through the term promotion. So it doesn't mean that a promotion, it doesn't mean that we are creating a vacancy in a position that's left behind. It's really means that a person is growing in their role and they're being recognized for that. And it's an important way to internally promote folks growing in their responsibility and seeing progress that they're making, and that helps a lot with retention. But do you want to add anything to that, Shaheen? I know you spend a lot of time thinking about this.
Thanks, Dawn. No, I think you
Can I just
covered
add
it.
something? This is the chair speaking. Not everyone knows who people are who are speaking. For example, Lindsay Meehan is the Director of Human Resources, was just speaking. So for people watching who can't see, Shaheen, also maybe just give your title so we understand who's speaking, and appreciate that. Sorry for interrupting.
Thank you. This is Shaheen Khan. I'm the VP of Human Resources here at MCE. And I think Dawn and Lindsay did a good job covering it, but I'm happy to answer any other questions if you have them. Director Wilkinson.
Great. I have a few more follow-ups. Shaheen, how often do you do the compensation and classification studies?
We do them whenever there is a promotion or whenever there is a job offer that goes out. So when those changes happen, we have an independent tool that we use, PayScale. And every 2 to 3 years, we do a broader, large ranging scale through Mercer. That's to ensure that we are accurately keeping up with market and inflation and using a third-party independent consulting firm that specializes in it. And due to the cost, that's why we determined to do it every 2 to 3 years.
Okay, thank you. I also just reviewed the compensation information on the California State Controller's website in relation to MCE. And it seems there that there is an other pay item for a lot of employees that's rather large. Can you explain what that is? It appears to be bonuses, but I'd love to get a clarification on what that is.
I think we may need to look at the same data you're looking at so that we can answer that question in an informed way. Feel free to send it to us after the meeting. We'll follow up with you.
Okay, I'm happy to do that, but that would be good to clarify all the different components of staff's compensation to know whether there are any form of bonus payments being made. And then I think I've had most of my questions asked. The only other one I had was that the headcount number seems to say that you're asking for an additional 5 headcount this year, which would take you to 118. Last year, we approved already a headcount of 119. And so I'm just wondering how those two numbers match.
And do you want to take us to slide 20 so we can look at the head count? And I believe we have, do you want to respond to that question, Shaheen? Oh, okay. Yeah, the head count varies from year to year depending on vacancies and need within the department. So you can see here what the current head count is, and then the proposed new hires are showing there in the light blue. There are a couple of positions that we are no longer needing, so we're phasing out things that are no longer needed and then adding where we do have a need.
Okay, but my question's the same, which is we already gave a budget last year for 119 headcount, and now you're asking to go up from 113 to 118. And so I don't really understand why we'd need an additional increase in the budget when the headcount is lower, unless these people you're looking to hire are significantly more expensive personnel.
Yeah, I can take that, Director Wilkinson. So we did have some proposed positions that were in the last approved budget that we had, and we actually did not fill some of those positions, and some of the turnover that we had organically through the current fiscal year vacancies, we have not backfilled for. So that's the reason why the total number of staff is showing like a net increase of 1, like what you're saying. But the new positions that we are proposing are the ones that are outlined in the staff report and in the presentation. And they are fairly more complex based off of the needs assessment that we had in terms of taking a closer look at what positions we do need to fill versus what the business needs are. And that's how the determination came for the 5 that are being requested.
And slide 19 shows the titles of those 5 positions.
Okay, thank you. I've finished my questions.
Thank you very much, Director Wilkinson. Any more, Director Andre?
Yeah, great. Thank you. I do also have questions on the compensation. So as has been established, the budget for last year was 119 headcount and a total compensation budget of 29.6 million. That was last year's budget. This year's budget is 118 headcount, which is 1 person less, and the budget is 32.7 million. So 3.5 million more, but we got 1 less headcount. Can someone please answer what's going on with the numbers there?
I would suggest that you bring up that slide that shows the 5 positions, because I think they're very different technical, complex positions than maybe other positions. So I'm sure Shaheen or Don can take that, but look at power resources, finance, and legal, which are probably very more complex. But Don or Shaheen, did you want to take that?
Actually, can we look at the slide that says personnel before grant reimbursements? That's a better slide to illustrate what I'm talking about.
Is that slide 22, Director Andre?
I don't think we know the numbers.
Yes. So this slide is this shows last year's budget versus this year's budget. So there's an increase of 3.2 million total, but the headcount number is down 1.
Yeah, so the staff report provides a lot of detail about the breakdown in personnel costs. There are a number of things in there, including health benefits, employer taxes, ancillary benefits, and, well, a range of things related to personnel. probably not a good use of time to walk through what's in the staff report now, but if you have questions that aren't in the staff report, you can follow up later with staff.
Well, I read the staff report respectfully, and it doesn't answer this question, why we are going to be down one headcount, but our personnel costs are going to be up 10.8%. So what I might suggest is that you all put together a table showing existing staff versus new hires and the dollar amounts associated with that, and also break out the compensation costs on salaries. Please break out the promotions, the COLA, and the merit increases. And so that way we have a better understanding of what's going on in those buckets.
This is Director Darling. So I think, Director Andre, what I'm hearing you is you're concerned about the individual number of positions as well as the per person increases in operating expenses associated with those things that our CEO identified. Is that what are you?
I'm asking why we're going to be down one headcount, but our personnel costs are going to be up $3.2 million. That's my question. And so I would like to see more detail behind the numbers to understand how how the budget is being built.
So perhaps
I would like,
want to
so I would like to get some more information between what is allocated between existing staff and new hires, and also a breakout of, the three components I just said: salaries, merit increases, promotions, and COLA.
So if I may, Director Andrea, it's what Dawn was alluding to in the staff report. It's because some of those positions, they were hired in the end of the fiscal year, so of this current fiscal year. So the positions were just hired in this fiscal year and in the process of being hired. So there hasn't been an expense realized for these positions because those folks are just getting hired. So that's why the delta from this fiscal year that we are to the next one, because those positions that were added, they were added in the end of this fiscal year, or actually a couple of those haven't even been added. We are trying to hire. There's a power resources position that we've been trying to hire, and we haven't been able to find the person. And so this position has been out, as an example, for many months and rounds of hiring, and we haven't been able to fill it up. So this position, as an example, this position is calculated in this fiscal year as an expense partially. However, it hasn't even happened because we haven't been able to find that individual. So this expense hasn't even happened. But in the next fiscal year, we are going to have a full year of salary and benefits and expenses for this position.
I understand.
Yeah.
I
So-
understand that,
Director
but
Andre,
excuse me?
Sorry, I was
understand
just,
what-
we couldn't hear you. Sorry.
So I understand, Mayeda, what you're saying, but what I'm saying is part of whatever position was already allocated in last year's budget. So that those numbers were already reflected in there. So why do you need more money to cover less headcount? And then the second piece of this is it would be helpful for all of these numbers to show actuals to date versus budget, not just the 5 line items, but for compensation to show actuals to date versus what the what the proposed budget was last year, and also the proposed budget for this year. And that will make it clear to the board in terms of, if you didn't spend all of what was in the budget last year, what percentage of that is carry forward. But again, I don't think the numbers make sense here. If you didn't hire those people, but you already had them budgeted, so there was already money in last year's budget for these people, why is it up again 10.8%?
Sure. So we do the budget for 12 months, right? And let's just talk about one position that, just creating about one position. So we have a budget for 12 months. So we're going to hire one position. We didn't hire in the beginning of the year. So it's not a 12 months expense. Let's say it was a 2 months expense because we hired in a month 10. So in this year fiscal year's budget, we only had 2 months of salary instead of 12 months. So we hired this person at month 10. 2 months of expense. Then the next fiscal year, we have, unless we're going to lay off this position, we have a 12-month of expense of that position. And this is where the delta is. But I would like to Lindsay Meehan, Director of Human Resources, to add to it, please.
The other portion that I would add is that when we project in the budget, we do set expected start dates. So the budget that is reflected is not, the positions are not immediately reflected for a full 12-month period. So for some of these positions, we knew that the need would not come up until the end of the fiscal year. So in last year's fiscal year budget, or this current one, they would only have been budgeted for the 2 months in that projected budget that was approved. And so then for the proposed budget, now we're realizing the full 12 months. And so for the 5 new positions also, those start dates are throughout the year, but those needs are more immediate. So we're seeing more of their salaries in this fiscal year as well.
Yeah, I just want to cut this off and move on to the next question. I think if there are follow-up questions, there is a finance committee as well as you can do this off the line, but we do need to move on. So what other questions do you have, Director Andre?
Yeah, I do want to. So I would like to see those numbers broken out again against existing staff.
Okay,
versus
let's
new
move
hires.
on. Next question.
And then the second piece of this is for the energy costs. I think it would be very helpful to see what the price ranges are and the assumptions behind the buildup of the energy costs, the 6 categories of the major energy, but particularly for resource adequacy, the attribute purchases and the hedges. And I think that will give the board a better sense of what's actually baked into the budgets. And back to what Vicken was saying, that if there are deviations or significant deviations from the assumptions that are in the budget, that those get brought back to the board. And then lastly, on the EV charging, the EV rebate programs, one of those contracts was in the consent calendar. But I just want, and I noticed that the implementation fee for one of the programs was extremely high at $1,200 per EV rebate. And I wanted to see how we felt about how cost effective the administration of that program is.
Well, that is a consent calendar item, which we can pull off at that time. I realize you're reflecting on what this means for the actual budget, but I don't think it's appropriate right now to discuss that contract and the implementation costs. So I just want to note that reducing funding for the EV Instant program starts on page 200 of your packet, and it talks about 438 fewer income qualified customers if we chose option 2. So another question?
That's it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Other questions in San Rafael? Director Painter?
Thank you. And I'm kind of bringing this back and approaching it from the perspective of what we're trying to put together as a budget, and a budget is something that is fluid, right? So you may come to us in next quarter or halfway through the year, and we have some different assumptions we need to make about energy revenue, et cetera. So I don't know if you have it in a slide, but I'm looking at what you put together, which I think is a really good piece of information, which is the approved and proposed budget and the variance. Because my question on this, and I don't know if you have a slide to put it up or if folks just have it in their packet, but I found this to be really helpful to be able to help me decide, should we look at cuts in areas, and if so, where? So I'm looking at, for those who are interested in following, again, it's the approved budget for fiscal year 25-26 and then proposed 26-27. And it lays out the numbers that you've talked about in other slides, but at the very bottom of the slide, we get to the budget net increase in operating fund balance. And what I'd like to understand is, are we looking at a negative $8 million impact? And if so, is that really what we should be thinking about in terms of where we might want to trim the budget? Or, not being a finance expert, am I looking at that incorrectly? Because I'm trying to sort of fine tune and say, obviously in a perfect world, we keep
all of these programs going, right? We would look at the instant rebate program and try to do our best to put it forward. But if it's something that we simply can't afford to do, then we may need to look at it because it's a big dollar item. So can you explain to me what that number means? And is that something we should have top of mind when we're trying to provide the feedback to say, you know, are there places we should, when we start our fiscal year, where we should be more conservative in terms of our assumptions for expenses?
Hi, Director Painter. I can take a shot at that question. So I think you're talking about slide 3 in the condensed slide deck, and maybe we want to pull that up on the screen. Okay, great. So that change in net position number is inclusive of the programs, even if the board doesn't make any reductions. So that is essentially showing the status quo for the program expenses. And at this time, it's $9.1 million for program expenses, but based on the options that your board has today, that number could decrease. And so we would see a slightly bigger or higher change in that position if the expenses were reduced.
Maybe not being a numbers person, I'm just a little confused. So why does it say, when you look at the detailed sheet that I was referring to, what is that $8 million number?
I think that's the transfer to the Program Development Fund, and there is a slide on that. I think it's slide. Let's see if I can find it. I believe it's slide 25. Can we pull that up? I think it's this number, correct?
Take a look. I'm trying to see that. Which slide is that?
25.
25. I can see it better on my computer. Whoops.
Okay. Yeah, so at this time, the transfer from the operating fund to the Program Development Fund is $8 million. And that transfer would cover the expenses shown under the expenditure section, which at this time, again, is based on not making any changes to our program's budget. The reason why that number is different than what you're seeing when you sum all the expenses is because that $8 million transfer would cover the expenses here, but it would also eliminate the deficit that we see at the bottom of $1.1 million. And that deficit was driven by the reasons that Alice spoke about earlier when we saw a very significant spike in the demand for those incentives. And so MCE stepped up and was able to continue the program. Does that answer your question?
Kind of. I'm just trying to approach this more from the perspective of, are we in a position where we really need to think hard about trimming expenses because we're looking at transfers that we're comfortable with or not comfortable with, and should we do that now? I think it's going to be really important, as we always do, to come back and do quarterly updates to say where we are so that we can have a check-in and look at budget adjustments. I'm just trying to understand a little bit more how comfortable I am with the transfer, this kind of transfer for these programs. So I'll let that sink in. Thank you.
Thank you, Director Painter. Any more in San Rafael? Moving on to Concord. Questions only?
Madam Chair, I have a question. This is Director Murphy.
Okay, go ahead, please.
Yes, thank you again, staff, for the presentation. I wanted to ask a couple of questions regarding, I think what I'm reading as not the Program Development Fund, but the Virtual Power Plant Fund. Can you all speak to the energy storage program? I see that we have paused that, but I just wanted to make sure, one of the concerns I see, of course, in our participation is just meaningful participation on the program moving forward, but I didn't know, kind of reading the staff report, what's the current status of the program, but how are we still building that drive for participation for energy storage?
Yes, so the energy storage program that you're asking about, this program started in 2020. And so the reason why you see that budget going down year over year is these projects take a really long time. And a lot of the customers that we were targeting would not have done this work without our involvement. So we're continuing to engage with those customers whose projects haven't closed out yet. We have some grant funding coming in. We have grant funding from the Marin Community Foundation that we're continuing to enroll new customers in to spend that money down. And then the biggest effort that we have going this coming fiscal year is actually our DOE federal earmark funding. We have $1 million grant that we'll be using to promote energy storage at municipal locations in this coming year. And so, yeah, currently that's where we're at. We're sort of winding down that first iteration of the program, focusing our efforts on the $1 million DOE grant.
Gotcha. So we're kind of we're still focused on the program at large, but instead of residential customers, we're looking at municipal customers primarily now?
Yeah, this coming year, the focus will be municipal customers.
Gotcha. Okay. And then it seems like we are well resourced to manage the municipal customers. We're just removing an item under the VPP fund because we have a grant for.
Yeah, so that same staff that was following the previous program will now be supporting the requirements of the federal grant and working with those new customers.
Okay, that makes a lot more sense. Thank you so much for answering that. And then just the last question about the program development funds. At this point, which programs are delivering the highest emission reduction per dollar? And then how are we, or if staff has an idea about this, are there any clear sunset criteria for any of the programs? Obviously, these are great programs that we've had, but I'm just wondering about, how are we measuring kind of the end goal of each program? I would like to see them all fully funded after today, but I also want to think about, has staff considered the thought process on the performance metrics or the sunset criteria for these programs?
Yeah, good questions. The first question about dollars per GHG emissions reductions, I don't have that exact statistic for the programs, but I will say that there's a kind of new format for a customer programs update that has been in the full board packet for I think the last 3 full board meetings. And that lists the GHG reductions for each program. And so you could get to that number. I'm sorry, I don't have it. And we certainly can pull that together for a future meeting, but you could sort of derive that from that information that's in that report because it has the budget for the program and the GHG emissions reductions from that program. And then, I'm so sorry, can you remind me what your second question was?
I was just wondering about thank you, Dawn. Thank you so much. The second part of my question was around the sunset criteria. The programs that we have been great programs. Again, I think there's a need, right, to fund them today, but just wondering about staff's thought process as it relates to sunsetting programs. One of the items that has come up during the budget workshops was around the MCE sync, right? And so just wondering about that as a particular program. When we first started it seemed very helpful. Now it seems like everybody has a type of MCE synced across the industry. So I'm just wondering, like, what are your thought processes on that criteria as you consider the development of these programs versus the closure of them?
Yeah, so there are several programs that have closed in the last couple of years. And so we look at how effective is this program at actually motivating customer behavior? Because that's usually what we're trying to do is like put some kind of incentive out there and then have customers respond to that. So there have been some programs that haven't been very successful. Like one thing that we're not proposing in this coming fiscal year budget is the emergency water heater loaner program. That was something we were very excited about, and it was different and something that no one else had tried. But what we learned is that process is very expensive, and the amount that we were able to offer, it would have been just, not effective for us to offer the amount that we would need to make that process realistic for most people. So that's a program that we looked at. It had low participation, and the feedback we were getting from contractors was that we would have to put so much more money into it that just wasn't a good use of funds. We also kind of look at who else is doing similar programs. So again, like with some of the ones that we're proposing as options here, we're trying to understand who else might be backfilling this need. An example of that is Peak Flex is one that over the years, there have been a lot of competitors in that space. And so if if we're not really making a difference with our program, that might be a place that then we suggest we cut back or eliminate funding. So those would be some of the things that we're looking at.
Awesome. Thank you for your thoughts on that. And thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. I just want to suggest, Alice, when this comes to the board, it would be good, you have some stuff in the staff report starting on page 200 that really talks about each of the options. And if you can include the GHG reductions to date, I think that would also help the full board make decisions. Other questions in Concord? Otherwise, Director Darling?
Thank you. And great presentation, guys. I just wanted to go back to the FY 25-26 and the variance of 50 million, which presumably we could either use to refund our rate stabilization fund or otherwise apply to our fund balance. I never want to count chickens before I see them running around. Is this something that we feel confident in actually materializing?
At this time, yes, Director.
Okay. All right. So,
but things can change, and this is assuming that we don't have any unexpected power supply cost changes.
so if there's not a heat wave between now and April 1st.
Correct.
Thank you, guys.
In the budget, most of those costs are locked in already. So
Great. Thank you. That helps.
with our hedge strategy. Yeah.
Thank you. Other questions in Concord?
Yeah. Director Kohler, just this Vicky, just one comment, please.
Yes, go ahead.
So, Director Darling, as we have discussed before, we are anticipating to doing some using the ORF funds to supplement the upcoming budget. What Maida and Efren had shown you, and in addition to other mentions that we have done before, there are a lot of positive changes that the board could decide actually replacing in it almost half of the ORF that we would be using it for the next fiscal year budget. So this is really good news.
No, it is really good news.
And it's quite firm.
And I especially like that we had been planning on an ORF withdrawal, and now we are not needing that. That is always a great sign of strength to me. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions in Concord? Okay, I'd like to go to public comment now. Let's check, is there public comment in Concord?
No members of the public here in Concord.
Any public comment in San Rafael? Who's answering that question?
Sorry, no public comment here in Center.
Okay, any public comment on Zoom?
Yes, we have members of the public, Nick Papas, Jody Timms, and Dan Sejadin.
Okay, Nick, go ahead, please.
Thank you, and congrats to the new chair. Nick Papas, I am an MCE customer here in San Anselmo. I just wanted to reiterate some points that have been made in the process of both the budget and rates discussion around where MCE has discretionary funding. I remain somewhat perplexed that the discussion today is about a few $1 million here and there on customer programs when you have $54 million in proposed discretionary funding for 26-27 for short-term renewable attributes and carbon-free attributes. I think it's it's just quite surprising to me. $54 million is a tremendous amount of money in the scope of your budget, as has been discussed in a memo provided by me, which is on the MCE public comment page from Marine Conservation League and others. With a few notable exceptions, these short-term attributes provide effectively no environmental benefit. There hasn't been any substantive response to the concerns I raised or others have raised that these are essentially just stripping clean energy attributes from what are effectively, red state utilities like Merced Irrigation District and Grant County PUD that are happy to take MCE's carbon emissions in exchange for handing off their hydro. They're zero sum from an environmental perspective. The only way in which they're not zero sum is in how big of a hit they are to your customers' budgets. This is about $90 per household. I know these costs have come down considerably since the massive overspend on this a couple years ago. But I think that's still really, it's difficult to justify in the context of your severe budget shortfall and substantially higher rates than PG&E currently continue to spend $90 on where essentially marketing expenses, voluntary marketing expenses that are non-beneficial from an environmental perspective. The only response that I've seen presented on this is one which essentially asserts that I and others don't know what supply and demand is. I can assure you that the folks who initially assessed the concern of resource shuffling and the low value of these attributes, they're some of the most world-renowned economists at UC Berkeley, UC Davis, MIT. They know what supply and demand is. I think that's a little bit too cute, if I may. And I think I would just, again, challenge all of you to think of how you would justify meeting me or one of your other constituents on the street of why we're spending $90 this year on this greenwashing strategy. I live in a pretty much all electric home. I have an electric car. I will probably spend close to $200 this year on these attributes. And I would challenge you to justify to me, or for anyone, within the organization to justify to me why you're not having a serious discussion about these $50 million. These contracts have resale provisions. You are not bound to this. You may have committed some of this already. All of this is subject to resale. If it hasn't yet been produced, you can sell it to other entities. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker, please. I believe it's Jody Timms. Jody, go ahead.
Hi. Yeah, I just want to talk a little bit. I've made these comments before, but I am completely opposed to the cuts in programs that are presented. EV rebates is your most popular program, ran out of money the soonest, is the most important for transportation for very low income people. And you're considering cutting or eliminating that program. That makes absolutely no sense to me. I totally feel like it should be increased at this point. The number of greenhouse gas emissions from transportation and electrification of homes is what I spend all of my time talking to the public about constantly. And to feel like MCE is not supporting that, I don't know how I'm going to make those arguments. It's very, very hard to convince people of the importance of climate change and electrification right now, given the chaos in the world and all the other affordability issues everybody has. And you're considering taking away the backup for what we need to encourage rebates, especially for low-income folks in buildings and automobiles. So I'm just frustrated with that. I realize, and then in terms of personnel, I realize it's only 6% of the budget, but it does not look good that you're looking to increase the number of staff positions and the finances at a time when you're also cutting the programs. The word out there, and I have no other way to prove this, but is that the average salary of employees at MCE is over $200,000. I worked for the county for 10 years. There were such things as hiring freezes, promotional freezes in difficult times. I have not seen the kind of comparison, and maybe I have not read all these staff reports top to bottom, but comparisons with other CCAs. The other word is that MCE is overstaffed compared to other ones and overpaid. So the public is only paying attention to the most basic information. They barely care about climate change at the moment. And I just feel like you're proposing guts and changes to the conversation I need to have every day when or anytime I'm tabling or having an electrification fair or anything else where I'm trying to promote people moving toward decreasing their greenhouse gas emissions through their homes and EVs. So that's all I need to say at the moment. Thank you.
Thank you, Jody. Next speaker, I believe, is Dan Sagata.
Good afternoon. Just wanted to say you can kind of have your cake and eat it too here. As pointed out, the program cuts are not that big in a dollar sense. On the other hand, the amount spent on attributes, which have no benefit to the planet, is quite large in the 50+ million range. Also, per my prior comment, that is, we see there's 13 million of savings was presented for the carbon free, and we calculate about 12 to 15 million for the PCC1. although management hasn't weighed in on how they calculated the 3 million. That's part of the question, but that could be $26 million of savings, which could easily fund, or you could take some portion of that. This is not binary, and you could use that to fund the programs or whatever else. So just pointing out, there's very little additionality or environmental benefit to these attribute purchases. And then I do want to take up Viken's comment that, and just kind of point out that these budgets are not breaking out on the energy side the most two basic components that are building them, the megawatt hours and the price per megawatt hour. Without that and kind of seeing those two components, you don't know whether something's going up because the quantity is going up, or the price is going up, or the quantity is going down and the price is going way up. You're kind of lost. And the reason that's important to know the volume or the megawatt hours is because that is what you are committing to buy in the market. And that is the mistake you have made in the past. You said, no matter what, we're going to buy this volume of attributes. We don't care what the price is. So to Viken's comment, there definitely has to be a kind of a broader board awareness and a presentation by management of, by the way, here's the quantity and here's the price that this cost us. So you kind of have start to have a sense for the volumes you are purchasing in the market. And then you can kind of see the price assumptions explicitly. And you can kind of say, okay, are we going to commit this volume, to buy this volume of megawatt hours of this attribute, no matter what happens in the market? So again, it goes back to having clear criteria, and do not approve something where you're buying a fixed quantity no matter what. There's going to have to be price triggers and some flexibility in the volume to go down if prices go way up. And that ignores the fact that we think these all have very questionable value anyway, so a logical place to cut. Thank you for your attention. Appreciate you grappling with some of these issues and trying to focus on where the big dollars are in this budget, where there's low impact or cost to cutting. Thank you.
Thank you, Dan. There's no one else on Zoom, correct, Madam Clerk? No, okay. Bringing it back, I understand that Dawn has a couple of slides on staff salaries. Let's keep this short because I think we need to move on to deliberation. Dawn, did you want to go ahead?
Sure, we can go to slide 21. We'll keep it real short. That's probably the only one we need to look at, but that is giving folks an overview of how CCA average fully loaded personnel costs compare. And you'll see MCE's kind of in the middle of the pack here. I think the other number that's important to look at besides the average fully loaded personnel costs is the headcount. MCE does have the highest headcount, and closely followed up by AVA, which used to be East Bay Clean Energy, and then Clean Power Alliance, which serves Los Angeles and Ventura counties. We have a higher headcount because we offer substantially more programs than any other CCAs. We've been around longer and have developed expertise that we have in-house instead of through external consultants. So that's another factor. So hopefully this will be helpful in thinking about how our costs compare to other CCAs.
Thank you, Dawn. Okay, and we're done with questions. So I'd like to move to deliberation, and let's move to Concord first, please.
Madam Chair, this is Director Murphy. I'm happy to start if that's okay.
Okay, love that. Go ahead.
Well, first and foremost, I want to thank staff again for the for reference to the customer programs update from our January 15th board meeting. If folks are interested, they have amazing information, and you have to do a bit math, but it has great information about the emissions reduction per dollar. So just want to thank you all for that. I do also want to reiterate too, I heard members of the public speak to what I heard as cheering on our agency to ensure our programs are here. Just ensuring that folks know the process, that the budget workshop had considerations of program reductions, and that was talked about. I don't think staff is proposing today. If I'm wrong, let me know, but we're not staff is not proposing cuts today. They're just simply asking and providing us information that board members had asked for. That being said, I think it's no surprise, I would be certainly happy to support the full program development fund today, and certainly think it would be really against our mission at this point to reduce those programs. So thank you to staff for suggesting these ideas and getting us the homework that we need to do. But also, I think right now we do need to double down on our programs, and certainly happy to support us continuing as per staff recommendation with the full program development budget presented. The only concern I had, and this is a comment, but just really something that I think staff has done a tremendous job at developing, was the communication services. I feel like at no time more than now we are constantly being critiqued. Our agency has been critiqued. Our programs have been critiqued. Our staff has done a tremendous job at reinforcing the work that we need to do to move forward. But I do see a 15% budget decrease of communications. I know we have a tremendous public affairs department that does a lot of work, but one of the things that my constituents in my community often speak to is the deep groundedness of our programs, and particularly the way in which MCE communicates. So I know staff is doing its job to cut where we can, but I was hoping that there would be potentially, before this comes back to the board, a lighter decrease, if you will. To be frank, I think when I'm reading, particularly in the staff report, this could result in a smaller footprint at local events and community-driven initiatives. I think about my city. I think about the partnerships that we've forged together between our two agencies, and I would hate to really, during this time, see any city not feel missed in the process of this next year. I know that staff mentioned in the report that this decrease is temporary. Frankly, I think we don't need the decrease right now. Again, we are being attacked at the federal level. And we've honestly, even as an executive board, had conversations about misinformation in the community. And so I just really do think we should restore that funding, at least keep it consistent with whatever the number should be that does not decrease that amount of communication services. But outside of that, I think this is a very solid budget. I'm really excited about our reserves and what we're doing here, and really want to thank staff for giving us the opportunity to consider the good and the bad and the ugly. But it looks like we're forging forward. So I'm happy to support both the program update and then, the program development fund, and hope that staff will come back to the board with the full services for the communications budget.
Thank you, Director Murphy. Other deliberative comments?
We'll go down the line here. I'll start, Director Darling.
And I just want to mention one thing. Not everybody has to provide deliberative comments. We welcome them, but
mine are much more succinct than Director.
Okay, great. Thank you.
He's looking
Okay,
at me.
Let's go, Director Darling.
He said so many great things. He said so many great things. I don't have to repeat it. I do support full funding for the customer programs. I think those are an important part of what we do, and especially given the federal noise that's going on. I really am relieved to see the potential for the increase in the net position. That one of the things that will allow us to do when we come back together to look at this package as a whole, when we discuss the MCE CARES credit, there was some question about whether or not we had exactly the right number. I would be comfortable when we come back to the full package as the full board with, if we need to add a little bit more to the CARES credit, to make sure that we have the opportunity for everybody to do that. I know our public commenters feel very strongly about the benefit of the short-term attributes. I think those are important questions that we're going to be looking at as we go through our IRP this year. They're very important questions to the regulatory bodies that control our power content label. But I think we have heard from the board as we went through the workshops that it is important to us to maintain our commitment to clean energy, and until something else comes up that better counts that, I would continue to support the power purchase as it's laid out, with the idea that if it does increase the flexibility in overall power acquisition, if we see a 10% increase in budget, we come back and take a look at that, because we have all seen how volatile this is. So that's my thoughts on the budget. Thank you.
Thank you. Others in Concord have deliberative comments?
This is Director Nakamura and for Concord. My only comments here are that we have heard some questioning about personnel costs and increases there. I think I'd like to see a little bit more breakdown as far as how much of that is benefits and insurance, because we know that those costs are skyrocketing in many environments. I think that what I'd like to add too here is that I think that we have very the staff and the personnel with MC do phenomenal work. We have a good organization, and I'd like to keep, and it is strong because of them. And so I'm not interested in looking at any cuts to the personnel if by asking questions about personnel costs is where some of those comments are going. And then the other thing with the programs, I didn't see a breakdown for the benefits to the cost benefit analysis. Some of them have much higher dollar numbers associated to them, but are we spending more to make that happen, or how many customers are we serving for those programs? So I'd like to learn a little bit more on those, and that's all for now.
Okay, and I think that's a message to staff when you bring this back to the board. Other deliberative comments in Concord?
Seeing no other raised hands.
Okay, so moving back to San Rafael, deliberative comments only, not questions. So I'm going to look down the line. Micah, I know you have to go. Did you want to make a quick comment?
Sure, thank you. Yes, thank you so much for the presentation, also for the workshops that you have had for the budget. I think it has been really helpful, and I agree with the program support that I think is very important to maintain those, to continue, improving on our goals. So and yeah, so I think that's pretty much. I will endorse the recommendation from the staff without cutting any programs.
Thank you. Director Painter?
Yeah. I'll keep my deliberative comments also brief, and also fully support the continuation of our programs. I think it's what we're known for and what we stand for. So if we can continue that, I think that's really good. I do think that when this comes to the full board, we need to put just at least a few comments in there to explain, sort of yet again, because I know we already have, about the energy mix and why we budget for both short-term and long-term, or short-term and the carbon-free attributes. I think it's clear in the slide that was presented that we're making some significant strides in increasing in our long-term PPAs, which is where we want to go. But just, I want to say I hear what the public commenters are saying, but I think at this time, and Director Darling already articulated that, I do think we'll look further at it in our IRP. We're also, if you look at that slide, have a very significant 74% reduction in the short-term contracts. But it is something that I think we want to be mindful of moving forward. So I think it would be beneficial when this goes to the board to have at least a slide or explain that a little bit more fully. And then also, I think we should explain the net position and use of those funds, and how that benefits all of the programs moving forward. So I think the slides are really well done, but when it comes to the full board, some of the points that you're hearing here today, I think if we could emphasize them a little bit more clearly for the public and for those who are not on committees at the board, it would be beneficial. Thank you.
Thank you, Director Andre. And I just want to emphasize, not everyone has to make deliberative comments unless you feel the need to.
Great, thank you. So I support the program costs, continuing the programs. However, as I said before, I do want to take a look at the actual implementation fees that are associated with that EV rebate program. Secondly, I feel that we need to trim personnel costs. So I would like to see, again, more detail on the personnel costs and how that budget is being built up, and seeing where we can cut, because the numbers don't make sense from year to year. With respect to the energy costs, again, I think more detail from what you've heard from the public, but also as a board member, I would like to understand exactly what the member of the public said, the volume purchase and the price per megawatt hour. And I said this during the budget workshops, I would like to understand what the regardless of what rate option we selected, I think it's beneficial for the board to discuss what band of renewable energy targets we put and give to management so that there is flexibility for management with respect to, what our renewable energy targets are. So I think that that needs to be a conversation that comes before the board, and we need to have that discussion. I am in favor of trimming these attribute purchases where we can. And then lastly, I am opposed to increasing the communications budget. I think in a year where we are asking our ratepayers to pay more, or at least more than PG&E, I think that we need to be cutting costs where we can. So I would be opposed to increasing the communications budget. Thanks.
Thank you. Director Prey.
Yeah, I'll keep it brief. I support fully funding our programs budget. So option number 1 is laid out. In terms of staff, I did have one question. I know we're in deliberative.
Questions at this point.
We're in deliberations here, but
Okay.
Chair, it did list as one of the new positions a manager of finance, and I know we have a manager of finance, so I was curious about what that position was, and that came up in the course of our other questions that came after me.
Okay, well, let's move on for deliberative comments and then quick answer to that. Go ahead, Director Wilkinson, if you have deliberative comments. No, we're not doing that right now. We're doing it after.
Okay, so a request first. I think when you bring the final budget, it would be good to have a compare with estimated actuals for this year, which is what you provided last year.
I'm sorry, can you repeat that? I couldn't understand the beginning.
When you bring the final budget, if you can include a comparison also with expected actuals for the current fiscal year. You did that when you brought the budget for every line item last year, and so it'd be good to include that this year as well. I agree with most things that have been said. I think the programs aren't where we should be cutting money, but I agree with Director Andre that $1,200 contractor payment for every rebate of $2,000 to $3,500 seems excessive, and I'm curious whether we have bid that out. But I know we're not allowed to ask questions right now, but I would definitely like to look at that. I would like to see specific policies adopted in relation to budget amendments and energy procurement, and particularly around attributes, but that has also been discussed. And I just want to comment on the compensation side. It's impossible for us as a board to understand what's going on. There's just too many moving parts that we don't really have access to, and I'd really encourage, regardless of when hires are made, that the April budget includes full year costs for headcount, for promotions, for COLAs, for merit increases, for bonuses, for everything, so that we can truly see what that year-on-year comp looks like, even though you're effectively budgeting more than maybe necessary. Otherwise, it's impossible for us to know what's going on. I truly don't understand the idea of merit increases versus promotions, because the merit increases are meant to reflect general improvements in people's performance, and the promotions without significant job classification changes is not something that normally happens in the public sector. So I would like to recommend at this point that there is an ad hoc compensation committee established so that we can really, as an executive committee, which is still, according to Resolution 2018-09, meant to be consulted in relation to compensation, that we do a full analysis, because none of this feels normal in terms of normal growth in compensation in the public sector, and we're seeing these jumps every year. And this year in particular, where we're asking ratepayers to pay $250 more per customer on average than PG&E for the typical customer, it feels like a smack in their face to say at the same time as that we're going to increase salaries by 15.4%. That isn't meant to be not encouraging or dismissive of staff. It isn't. It's just reading the room in terms of where we are as an agency, and I would really like to see those numbers coming down. Thank you.
Before we answer that brief question, I just want to provide my comments. I want to say that I'm fully supportive of the customer programs moving forward and the recommendation by staff. I want to also just briefly mention that California recognizes the need for short-term purchases as well as long-term, and because the cost of long-term contracts and we realize that results in new steel on the ground. But however, they're very limited and very expensive. And so California's allocation is 65% for long-term contracts. So I just want to say I'm fully supportive. I think some of the issues that have been brought up today might be better dealt with in the Finance Committee. And, as far as some of the questions about personnel issues, I think maybe more of a deep dive at that point. But I want to just briefly ask, and I don't know who is answering this question because I'd like to call for a motion and let's move on. We have a director leaving. So very briefly, why do we have another position in finance that's called manager? We have more than one manager, right?
Sure. No, currently we only have one manager. And with we don't have a strategic finance branch to our department. So with this other manager of finance, we would build a strategic finance, risk management, credit, and we'll be more developed and focused on that.
Thank you.
And also with needs of the newly formed finance committee, we're having a lot more work, and we would like to develop even further the department.
Okay, I'd like to call for a motion, please. Thank you for answering that. Go ahead. Go ahead, Director
second.
Lawrence Galati.
Oh, I'm
Motion.
sorry. I'll make a motion to approve the budget as recommended by staff.
Could I just clarify the motion is to recommend to the board to approve the budget?
That is right, to recommend the recommendation to the board.
Second.
Okay, so that was Director Painter, second. I'd like to call for a roll call vote, please, Madam Clerk.
Belvedere,
No.
Benicia,
Yes.
Concord,
Yes.
Contra Costa County,
Yes.
Fairfax,
Yes.
Larkspur,
No.
Mill Valley,
Yes.
Napa,
Yes.
Pinal,
No.
Do we have Pinot?
I said no.
No. San Rafael,
Yes.
Walnut Creek.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Thank you very much.
Chair, can I just request that it be noted in the minutes that I requested the formation of an ad hoc compensation
Okay,
committee?
that's not agendized for this, so.
I understand, but I'm allowed to reflect that in the minutes. Thank you.
Okay, fine, thank you. All right, thank you, Director Lawrence Galati. Okay, let's move on to consent calendar. And I first want to ask if any directors want to pull something from consent, and we will handle that separately.
Yes, I want to pull one of the consent.
Which one?
Hold on a second. Sorry.
Do you want to look here?
Oh, yeah, great, thank you. C2.
Okay, C2. Catalina, do we need a motion to pull that or just go ahead and pull it?
No,
Okay.
that could be pulled and the remaining items could be addressed in a separate motion. Would like to just acknowledge that we have a slight clerical edit that needs to be made to C1, just to reflect that Director Lawrence Gulati was actually present. And so when that is approved, we'll include that clerical edit.
Okay, great. Thank you. Anyone in Concord want to pull an item from consent? We have a request to pull item C2, which we're going to handle separately. Okay, seeing none, I would like to take public comment on the entire consent calendar, absent item C2. Is there any public comment in Concord? Any public comment in San Rafael?
Chair, I'm sorry. It's actually C3. I just checked. Sorry. It's C3 that I'm pulling. Apologize.
Okay, all right. So just to clarify, we're taking public comment on items C1, C2, C4, and C5. And there was no public comment in Concord, none in San Rafael. Is there anyone on Zoom, Madam Clerk?
I see no raised hands, Chair.
Okay, so I'd like to call for a motion on the remainder of the consent calendar, absent item C3, please.
This is Director Nakamura. I will move that we vote to approve C1, C2, C4, and C5.
Director Darling seconds.
Okay, Madam Clerk, can you do a roll call vote, please?
Yes. Belvedere,
Yes.
Benicia,
Yes.
Concord,
Yes?
Contra Costa County,
Yes.
Fairfax,
Yes.
Larkspur,
Yes.
Mill Valley,
Yes.
Napa,
Yes.
Pinole,
Yes.
Santa Fe,
Jessica,
She
Santa
has
Fe had to
left.
leave.
Walnut Creek.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Great. Okay, so we're moving on to item C3, and I'm not sure if someone would like to do the staff report or just move quickly into the issues that Director Andre wanted to raise, or do we need a staff report? Would that be Vicken?
If it's okay, I'd like to just address the questions that were raised earlier related to this contract. And so just for everyone, this is the contract related to our EV Instant Rebate Program. And I believe some of the questions that came up earlier were around the implementation fees. And so I wanted to speak to that, if that's okay, to just start there.
Yeah, let's start there, and then we'll see if Director Andre has further questions or others do. Go ahead. Thank you, Alice.
Okay. So a couple of things on this contract. First, we did select our partners through a competitive solicitation. This was when we launched our EV rebate program. We have completed 3 years with this partner. So this contract amendment in front of you all today would be for the 4th year with this partner. And they were selected through a competitive solicitation. And then just to talk about this fee a little bit more, I wanted to explain 2 things. One, the difference between the program as we run it today and the way we used to run it before we brought on an implementation partner. And then also sort of our strategies around contracting with implementation partners to reduce risk for MCE. So starting with that second one thing that we try to do with all of our program contracts is tie the implementation fees to performance. So that's why you see here that most of the compensation going to our implementation partner is tied to actual vehicle rebates that are delivered. There's a lot that is paid for out of that implementation fee that might not be obvious if you're just looking at, the dollar per EV rebate that we're paying for, but it does sort of limit risk to MCE because in the event something goes wrong with the program and the money is not getting out to our customers, we're not also on the hook paying for services with our partners. So that's why it's all sort of tied up in this implementation fee. And then the second thing that I wanted to speak to is just, what are all those services that are in there and how our current program meets our customer needs better than our prior program. So before we launched the EV Instant Rebate Program, we used to do more of sort of a mail-in rebate type EV rebate program where our customers would go out, purchase a vehicle, and then submit all their paperwork to MCE, and then we would cut them a check for their rebate. We handled that program completely in-house with MCE staff. And one of the reasons why we chose to bring on more resources through an implementation partner was to offer the rebate at the point of sale at the dealership. So today, when customers go into a dealership, the dealer is able to take that rebate off the price of their vehicle. And that allows our rebates to reach the customers that really need that to make that decision to purchase an EV. And it also has resulted in this program being so successful and us seeing the type of uptake that we see through the program. So some of the things that are included in that $1,200 per vehicle implementation fee, it's not just processing that rebate. We have 111 participating dealers, and our implementation partners go out, recruit those dealers, explain what the program is, get them set up with the technology to be able to validate that those customers who are applying for the rebate are eligible MCE customers. It includes managing the income verification process, ongoing training and follow-ups with those dealerships to make sure that they're representing MCE's program accurately. We have a live question line for dealers if they are out selling a vehicle and they need to know some answers about MCE's program, they can reach out to our program partner. And it also includes all of the support for customers that may have questions about our rebates as well. So I just wanted to provide that full context of what that fee is paying for, and then also the reason why we have it tied to the rebate is that limits our sort of exposure if that program design was not successful.
Thank you. Director Andre, did you have further questions?
Yeah, good to hear that you put this out to bid. Do you put it out to bid every time, or did you just put it out to bid 3 years ago or 4 years ago when you first signed this contract?
We don't put it out to bid every time just because we have invested a lot of resources into building up that IT infrastructure that allows the dealerships to validate if customers are MC customers, but the pricing hasn't changed significantly, over that time that we've been working with our partners. And then I will also say that our staff, we work really closely with other CCAs, so we do see what other CCAs are doing with their programs and, what are the results of the solicitations that they are putting out. And that's sort of a benchmark that we use to know that we're paying appropriate prices for the programs that we're delivering.
So you're saying that if you were to try and negotiate down this implementation fee, because this is like 60%. If someone's going to get a $2,000 rebate and we're going to pay $1,210 to implement this program, it just doesn't seem like it's very cost effective to MCE. So have you tried to renegotiate down the implementation fee? I understand you have some initial startup technology costs associated with that, but over time, would you expect that some of these implementation fees could be going down?
I think one of the problems with that is, like I was saying, we used to have lower implementation costs tied to our program, and the design of that program made it so that that program was accessed by people who were more likely to purchase a vehicle without MCE's involvement. And so the design of this program is a little bit heavy on the administrative costs, but we feel that that is worth putting in because it allows us to make the rebate available to those customers who are going to need all of that information at the point of sale. They don't have the resources to take the risk that MC's rebate isn't going to come through on the back end of their vehicle purchase.
Right, but at the point of sale, that feels like that's the way the state runs the program. So it's like that's the same program for everyone.
The state does not have a program yet.
Well, it seems to me like when I purchased a EV this summer, and regardless of who the provider was of the rebate, you could get it through the dealer. So the dealer is obviously working with multiple parties in terms of providing the rebate. So I don't know that this is specific to MCE, but there are definitely other parties out there providing these rebates that are doing the point of sale rebate. So this isn't really unique to MCE.
I don't actually think that that's true. There are tax rebates that are available at the point of sale, but there are not any other entities that are doing this exact program the way we are.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
All right. Director Wilkinson?
Alice, can I just ask an extra question there? Because, that all makes sense, and thank you for the...
Folks, I'm sorry, just kind of hard to hear Director Wilkinson.
Alice, thank you for the explanation. That was really helpful. The only thing that does come to mind, though, is that obviously the upfront costs for the contractor were high, as well as they develop all of these setups with all the different dealerships, etc. It feels like their marginal cost now is relatively low. And so did you go back and try and negotiate down that fee per unit now, just because these are 1-year renewable contracts, and so their margins now are extraordinarily high. And I was just curious whether that was part of the negotiation.
Yeah, and sorry, just to split those two things up, there were startup costs that were tied to the sort of tech infrastructure that's all linked into our Salesforce platform. Those are not recurring, and those aren't actually baked into this that was at the start of our contract. And just sharing the experience that we've had running this program for the last 3 years, the dealer management is actually a very intensive part of managing the program because there's turnover. There's a lot of individual salespeople dealing directly with customers who have to represent our rebate. So there is a lot of follow-up and a lot of training with those staff to make sure that they are managing eligibility correctly, income eligibility, and just generally representing our program correctly. So I don't think in terms of dealer management, we've seen it's not that you go out and you bring a dealership into the program and then you're hands off as that dealership continues to implement our program. There's a lot of ongoing training and sort of verification and following up on, issues that arise that we see throughout the program.
Okay, that is great. Thank you so much for the explanation.
Thank you. Questions in Concord? Seeing none, I'd like to move to public comment, please. There is no public comment in San Rafael. Is there any in Concord?
No public comment in Concord.
Is there anyone on Zoom, please?
I don't see any raised hands, but I do see staff member Melanie's hand raised online.
Okay. Does she have a question? Okay, Melanie, could you state your last name and what role you play in MCE?
Hi, good afternoon. My name is Melanie Biesecker, and I am a Senior Customer Programs Manager at MCE. And I just wanted to chime in on the conversation around the point of sale incentives that are available to customers in our service area, and just clarify that last year, customers in our service area that were income eligible could receive the federal tax incentive September 30th. And so they no longer have access to that. The only other rebates that are currently available to MCE customers would be the PG&E used EV rebate, which is not point of sale. You have to apply after you've purchased your vehicle. And then the other is the statewide Drive Clean Assistance Program, which is it's point of sale-ish. You apply for it ahead of time. It's a very lengthy process to submit your documents and get approved, and then go to the dealership with your certificate to get access to that rebate or that incentive. And then also the Bay Area Clean Cars for All program, which operates similarly. So ours is pretty unique in that we offer it at point of sale, which has significantly reduced barriers for our customers in accessing rebates and helping to make EV adoption more accessible for them.
Thank you. Okay, appreciate that. I'd like to call for a motion.
Move to approve consent calendar C?
It's C3, Director
C3,
Dar-
that's it. That's what I meant.
I will
Okay.
second that motion. This is Director Nakamura.
Okay, roll call vote, please. Madam Clerk?
Belvedere,
Yes.
Benicia,
Yes.
Concord,
Yes.
Contra Costa County,
Yes.
Fairfax,
Yes.
Larkspur,
Yes.
Mill Valley,
Yes.
Napa,
Yes.
Pinole,
Yes.
Walnut Creek.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Okay, thank you. We are moving on to committee and staff matters, sorry. I don't know, is this anyone in the room? In San Rafael, sorry, I guess I should mention that. Okay, seeing none, anyone in Concord?
I see no raised hands in Concord.
Okay, well, with that, we will be adjourned. Thank you. It is 1 minute to 2.